Continuing with the halachas of kashering kalim for Pesach, hagalas kalim, libun kalim, and there's so much to talk about, and I'm trying to stick to very fundamental yesodos about this. And yesterday we spoke about kibolo kachpolto, that the same way that the, let's call it chametz for now, goes in, that's the way the chametz goes out. And we shouldn't think we understand it necessarily, because I don't know if anybody understands it. It's exeris hakosov. Scientists tend to feel, okay, well, if I got that degree of heat and it went in, then it goes out. I don't even know if that's true scientifically. Like, just because you boil something at the same degree that it got boiled in, that you lose all taste. I don't even know if that's been scientifically tested, but it's halacha. Yaviru kol haba b'mayim, yaviru b'mayim. That's halacha exeris hakosov. And I want to talk about that for 1 second. But first, the Shulchan Aruch says in Tuf Nun Aleph, what can you kasher? Echad kli eitz, ve'echad kli even. This is a lashon the Rishonim, but Shulchan Aruch brings it. Echad kli eitz, ve'echad kli even. If you have something made out of wood, people are always surprised that you can kasher wood, but you can kasher wood. If you have a fork that you use for, a mixing spoon that you use for spaghetti, you could kasher it, use it for matzah meal. So echad kli eitz, ve'echad kli even, stone you can kasher, ve'echad kli bateches, and metal you could kasher. Dinam la'achsharim b'hagala, and the way you kasher those is with hagala. We spoke the other day about glass. That's not on this list. V'chein, and also, says the Rabbah, adds kli etzam rather, tzrichim hagala. Also, a kalim made out of bone. So that you could also do hagala. Maybe people have bone china. So bone china is indeed made out of the ashes of bone to some part, but it's also has in it, I think the majority of it is kli cheres, is some type of clay. So it's not, bone china is not like they took the arm of some cow and now it's on your table. That's not what's going on with bone china. It's using there's something about the bones of cows, I think it's cows, that add some luster to your dishes. So if you are so inclined, that's fine, but you can't do hagala on those. That has a din of kli ches. The other thing which one might think goes into this is that today there's a lot of materials that you would use in your kitchen, different things, and the name quartz, for instance, which is actually, I believe, a type of stone, but it's allowed to be used for a lot of different things. So one of the things that can be called quartz, or quartzine they call it, is when you take a stone and they grind it up in a machine into a powder, and then they recomposite it into something that looks even prettier than stone, because you could add a lot of different colors and things. So that's not real stone. And that the poskim say, Avnei Nezer, other poskim agree, we don't have the chidush of kashering, meaning it's exeris hakosov that you could kasher stone, that what goes in goes out the same way. We don't know if that's called a stone altogether. That's not a stone, it's just made out of stone. So we don't kasher that. On the other hand, if you have in your kitchen a slab of marble or a slab of granite, and you know it's authentic, not a composite or bone. So if you have a bone shayish, so then you can kasher it al yidei hagala. We'll speak at some point of exactly how you do it, but you can kasher it by pouring hot water on top of it from a kli rishon. But one more point about this. So if you're in good shape, actually, if you have a granite countertop, as far as Pesach goes, you might be in debt, but you're in good shape as far as Pesach goes. Just a very interesting point I want to bring out for illustrative purposes from the post skip. Many people will kasher their counter. As the counter is usually a klisheni, right? People don't cook on their counter. It's not a kli rishon. It can be a kli rishon, though. However, if, for instance, you put let's say you make a challah, and a challah is davar gush, and it's hot, comes straight out of the oven, you put it on your counter, on your marble. So now you're on your granite slab, and if you'll take it off, you'll see it's wet. So that becomes a davar gush, which remains a kli rishon on your counter with rotev between it, as an example. That's an example of how your counter become kli rishon. Same thing would be if you'll take a pot of pasta from the stove. So if you poured it onto your counter on purpose or by accident, that's iri kli rishon. That's not kli rishon, it's iri kli rishon. Well, let's say the bottom is wet and you put it down, so that's a kli rishon. That could also be, according to in your Deisim and Peites, a kli rishon. So it is possible, if you're not careful all around, or if you don't have things holding your pots, it is possible, like pot, what are they called, pot holders? Pot trays. That is possible of kli rishon. Probably most of it's a kli sheni. So how would you kasher it? The correct way to kasher it is what most people would do, is they take a kumkum of water, a tea kettle, and they take the tea kettle to make sure it's boiling, hot, bubbling, and then they go over every inch of the counter. What might be wrong with that? Assuming that, first of all, that's iri kli rishon, not kli rishon. If you want it to be kli rishon, you have to use a stone or maybe there's different methods that we can think of, but it might be iri kli rishon. But is it a good way to kasher? So poskim say a very interesting thing. Iri kli rishon, which might work, yes, if you're pouring something from a kli rishon, so it's called iri kli rishon. It's not quite kli sheni. So the way that works is you take a pot, you put it on the stove, you heat it up to boiling, and you pour it onto the counter. It's iri kli rishon. So poskim say we don't know if that's true in your plastic urn. The only, because the way a kli rishon, this is where I say it, I want to make this point, that just because we think it's right doesn't mean it's right. You'll say, well, the temperature is the same as it would be if it was in a metal pot, yes? But that's not the way a kli rishon works, just like it's not the way the oven works. The way a kli rishon, the Chazal understood, is a kli rishon is that there's a fire underneath, it's completely metal, and the metal conducts the heat all the way through, and it's cooking the water in a number of different ways. It's cooking the water through the heat that's in it. It's cooking the water from the fire on the bottom, and the dafnois hakadera are also. All this is Gemara in Chulam. So, and an Avodah Zarah. This is clear Gemara that there are many ways. Who says if you put an electric element on the bottom of a plastic kumkum, that's called a kli rishon, even though you'll put a thermometer in there and it'll say, well, it's boiling temperature. So what could be wrong? Because the answer is kibolo kachpolto and kli rishon and all these things. You have to look at the halacha, not at the science necessarily, because the halacha is different than the science. So is that good or is it not good? So many of the poskim say it is not good unless you have a real kli rishon al ha'esh. He brings here the Piskei Tshuvos that he says, Svaras ha'eishrim, the reason why that would not be good, ki yesh lachshish ki b'sha'esh eidoi tachas dafnos hakdeira yediloi kechli shedi sha'adafno she'eda b'alesh mitzadanois hasabayim. So here's the logic. The plastic, you see that the element at the bottom of your kettle is fighting with the plastic to keep it hot. It's not being encouraged by the walls of the kedera as it would be in a metal pot. It actually has to work harder. So who says that's a kli rishon? And therefore, it might have a bit of a cliche. That it's getting cooler every second. Plastic is not the same conductor of heat as metal, right? Obviously. He says, however, we paskin it is good, and he brings here from the Yesodei Yeshur, I think was a Rav in Toronto, and he says the reason it should be, he thinks it's good, is the mistaver came. It's mistaver that it's good. We see the water is boiling. Okay, it's mistaver, but I'm not sure if it's mistaver. I'm not necessarily suggesting everybody takes this chubur. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is these are complicated details of kibolo kachpolto, so you really have to not just assume with your common sense necessarily. He's saying, well, common sense says it is good. It must be like a kli rishon if it's the temperature of kli rishon, or it could be it's not only the temperature is just one factor amongst a number of factors that makes something into a kli rishon.